I was sitting at the bank with the bank manager, and I was watching her open account after account, and all of them were virtually empty. I was trying to transfer funds, something that I thought would take 5 minutes, while my husband was lying in the hospital, unfortunately dying. In that moment, I discovered we were broke. I had no idea. I was completely blindsided. I did not realize that my life was about to change in ways that I could not even imagine.
Vivian, so good to have you back on Titans of Transition. It's been like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years maybe.
Maybe almost 6, I think.
Oh boy. Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause it's right around pandemic time, I think, when we
Yes.
did
And
the
it's,
first one. And you've been busy. You've been speaking a lot, but also you wrote a book as
I
well.
did.
So does the book and your speaking tie back to this situation with your husband and the financial shock of thinking you were set up great for the future, but then finding out something to the contrary?
100%. That is exactly why I wrote this book, because I want to make sure, as humanly possible in my abilities, to help others not go through what I went through, because it was, in a word, horrific.
And you were totally taken off totally taken off guard by the whole situation. So do you offer, I mean, I'm just kind of curious because I know you have a heart for helping others avoid this, but I'm wondering kind of the more specifics of how.
Well, the book is part memoir. I do talk about my story, at least surrounding the part where I find out about the situation I'm in financially. And it's also part journal. It's part quizzes, so that you can figure out where you are in your financial picture as the reader. And I give ideas on how to have the hard conversations and why we don't have the hard conversations around money. And it's called Unspoken Costs: How to Have Relationship Saving Money Conversations, because I didn't do that. And I paid a very heavy price for that. And so that's what the impetus of the entire book is: to get over your fear, get over any conditioning you've had as a child or a society, and start talking to each other and exchanging the information you need to exchange. Sorry about that. To make sure that you don't have blindside each other if something were to happen. So that's exactly why I wrote the book.
So that's kind of a weird thing. And because I know my wife, Barb, has been asking me for the past several months, she said to me, I'm not sure how to find all the accounts we have. And do you have something in one place? And I hate to admit it, but I don't have like a little cheat sheet. My answer is, well, we share the same password manager, just go use it. I found myself as a man not appreciating the situation as much. You know what I mean?
I absolutely know what you mean. In fact, when I speak to audiences, it's usually the men who come up afterward, surprisingly enough, and talk to me and say, oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way. I thought I was just providing and I was just taking care of everything, but it never occurred to me that if I'm not around, she might not have access. And especially in this digital world that we live in now. And I mean, you are way ahead of the game with having a password manager that your wife knows about and knows the passwords. You would not believe how many men die and their wives don't even know how to get into their computer. And there's things like utilities. Everything now has a password. And you can't make changes because, and it's incredible. So yes, that's a huge part of it. And like I said, you're ahead of the game, because that's one thing I always leave my audiences with. It's like, share your passwords. Just start getting into the habit. And like you said, a password manager is great for that. So
access. I mean, it starts with, at a fundamental level, part of it has to be access to all those accounts, but there's certainly a whole lot more. And and I need to appreciate where she's coming from. She's pretty technical, but doesn't use the password manager as much as I do. So sometimes she forgets about it, or her computer's different or whatever. But so I think it's important from both sides, but it's important as me as a husband thinking about how do I make this as easy and straightforward to her as possible? Because the other thing of it is you're in the midst of crisis when you've lost a loved one like that.
Yeah, you're in
So
the middle of grief. I mean, that's a whole
you're not
spin of it.
operating,
Yeah.
it's a different part of the brain. So you have to keep it as easy as possible. So that's my goal. But why don't we swing back and can you tell us a little bit more? I mean, for those who might not be familiar with your story, and I will drop our previous episode into the show notes for those who would want to go back to that after this one. After this one, folks. And that is kind of a little bit more of the context because there's a whole lot more going on, unfortunately, with your story.
Okay. And how far back do you want
Well,
me to go?
well, and just, I mean, it's one thing for us, for I would say a spouse or a loved one to not be as mindful as we were just discussing about information was needed. It's another thing for them to maybe kind of cloak things that were
Yeah.
going on.
Okay. So I love that you said it that way. That's a very nice way of saying it. I call it financial infidelity. And I have a whole part of my book talks about financial infidelity. And that can be anything from you are keeping secrets about how much money you're making or a bonus you got or how much you spent. Some people will pay part of a purchase with credit card and then the balance with cash because they don't want their partner to know exactly how much they spent. I mean, those are little things, but it can grow from there. Like obviously in my situation where my husband was in dire financial straits and was keeping a facade. We couldn't pay the mortgage, but he was paying the country club dues. He was keeping the image up, thinking that he could fix it. And
Mhm.
I know it wasn't malicious. I know he was protecting me, but the consequences were the same, right?
Yep.
And that's why I talk about in the book that we've got to get over our fear of talking to each other honestly and having transparency in our financial intimacy because it's just as important as emotional and physical intimacy. And that part of our relationship was missing. And of
Wow.
course, I didn't realize that till after he was gone. It was like, oh my gosh, we didn't talk about that and look what happened, and I had to
Yeah.
live with the consequences of that. And there was so much more that happened after he died. Like I didn't know our house was in foreclosure, so I ended up losing the house. And I mean
Mhm.
it was devastating on so many levels. So you're right. It's a very important topic, financial infidelity. And once you're in that situation, it's really important to get out of that situation because you don't want to hurt your spouse even after you're gone. You want to take care of them. So you got to get over your bad self and start talking to each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's interesting too. Because you use the word infidelity, and it's a little bit shocking almost, but it's really I think it's right on point because there's a break in trust there,
Hmm.
and regardless of the situation that caused there to be a break in trust, that is not sharing and being open with what the situation is, and then. You know what it's like when you're not open, then you cover, then you tend to cover up on the covering up, and it's this really negative loop. So that the person doing the infidelity, I'll put it that way, doesn't see how far of a gap has occurred over time.
Exactly.
And,
And
and
it's the
I
betrayal, like
appreciate
you
how you
said.
said you didn't think it was intentional and how he was kind of thinking he'd pull a rabbit out of the hat, is the way I would put it, eventually, and then wouldn't have to come clean with everything that happened. I think until everything was safe, maybe.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, I think he thought he could fix it. He was in denial about how sick he was, and he died very quickly. Diagnosis to death was 3.5 weeks, so
Mhm.
it took him by surprise too. But when we all go through our lives thinking, oh, we'll get to it and we've got enough time. But, 1,000 some odd people every day in the United States drop dead of some unforeseen heart attack or event. And so we never know what tomorrow has for us. So it's really important to not put this stuff off. And that's exactly why I wrote that book. It's like, do not think that you have all the time in the world, and get to it right now. And you can start small, like we were talking about, start with passwords. But I think, to your point, it's really important to get everything all in the same place. And I talk a lot about that too, because it took me 5 years of my life to unravel his estate and to put everything together and grieve and lose my house. I mean, it was a horrific part of my life.
And cover your financial basis in the middle of that. I
and try and build a business and try and work. Yeah, I mean, it was just an incredible time of life. So, it's really important, and it's an act of love. I mean, it's, I think, the highest act of love to make sure that you face reality. You are going to die one day. And unfortunately, as males, you'll probably precede your wife in death.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Sorry for that truth bomb. Women need to start marrying younger men. That's how we solve that problem.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. What, how can I follow that one?
You're welcome for the challenge. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. I think we had a connection to the John Maxwell team too, if I'm not mistaken. And you were focused heavily in the speaker track and becoming a speaker. I know you've gone through all that training, both Maxwell training and others. And I've been seeing you showing up on stage in a lot of different venues, big venues. And I'm curious how well, it's obvious to me, based upon your life experience, that a good niche for you would be in this area. But I'm just kind of interested in terms of how that has fleshed out over the last 6 years, 5-6 years, into, is this a topic, a singular topic you're focused in on most of the time now, or are there other things that you also speak on? And if so, how do those things tie in? Kind of a broad question, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's absolutely a great question, because it has been a process, let me tell you. And from when we last talked 5 years ago, as you mentioned, I had just gone through COVID, almost died with COVID.
Yeah.
And I had a near-death experience with COVID. And so that was life-changing, as if the previous events weren't life-changing enough. I had to go through that, which I'm totally grateful for, actually. But it has been an ongoing process, and this truly is my focus now. I think I was skirting around it because it was painful. It was too raw, too painful in the beginning. So I was doing, we've got to face our emotions. And I was kind of going in the grief direction. And then it just morphed into, wait a second, I need to be talking about my story, because it is a very jarring, let's use that word, jarring story. And having gone through all that pain, I should turn that pain into purpose, is what I say a lot of times. I'm just one of those people who feels like our life experiences help us grow, make us better. And I want to share that, because again, my why, I don't want it to happen to other people if it's a possibility for it not, because it happens a lot. My case might be a little more severe than others, but women walk into financial advisors or estate planners, blindsided every day, whether it's divorce or death or whatever, and not understanding where they are financially, and the rug's pulled out from under them. So, and to your point, make men aware of what's going on. And because I don't believe men are malicious, and I'm not a man hater. I think men just don't, they're so focused on being the provider and taking care of everything. And the women are focused on letting them do that. And so they never get together. And
we're
so
set up for a bad situation if we're not proactive about it, right?
And if I can change that just by 1%, in my lifetime, I would love that. So,
Well, I just love this. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it's a great example of how you get equipped in your life, get knowledge, firsthand experience, and it can be painful.
Mm-hmm.
That knowledge and experience then merges together with your natural gifting, and your heart comes into play, and you get a mission, you get a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of time people in sort of an esoteric kind of detached way sit down to sort of plan their life, and they think, whoa, what's my mission and what's my purpose? And, they go through that process, but they're not hooked by anything meaningful. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So they take a stab at it, but it doesn't become fulfilling. But when you have an intersection, and the last couple episodes, I've used the word ikigai, right? So when you have these overlapping areas of your gifting, your experience, and your knowledge in different areas, you get a purpose. You get a reason to be here. We're on this earth for some reason. Why are we here?
Right.
And I just think it's a great situation for you because you've really leaned into it. You've written a book. You're on stage a lot. And now you're a voice, and you're connecting and making a difference in people's lives and preventing some of the bad experience that you had.
And it's not easy. There are times when I tell the story and I still break up, even though it's actually 15 years. This period of time right now that we're in is when I was noticing how sick he was, and he was changing colors because the cancer had gone into his liver already, and begging him to go to the doctor. And this is the season right now, because he died September 8th. So
Oh boy,
this is the beginning of that 3.5 weeks, right? And so even after 15 years, it still is very emotional for me, because it was a huge transition in my life, huge, and I had no idea what was coming. And you're right, it took a long time for me to be able to lean into it and face it and grieve it and rebuild from it, all of that. And there was a point you made. It is my mission now, and it is my niche now. And do I talk about grief sometimes when people ask? Absolutely. I can talk about that all day long. It was a very long process for me, and I'm still in it, obviously. And it's part of my life. It always will be. Can I talk about other conversations that are hard other than money? Yes, because this conversation is a top conversation that people avoid. But the things that I talk about in the book, the strategies of having the conversation, can be applied to other hard conversations. So I can go there as well. But this is definitely my focus because it's my story.
Yeah. But I think that the fact that you can really be emotional, I'm just say emotional about it, that you can connect with your own pain, gives you a credibility with your audience and for those you're trying to help. We have all had enough of people trying to offer advice who have never walked those miles. We've had enough of that. And I think what really cuts through is when someone offers what they have learned and comes ready to share and to give, who have known the situation and the pain, really, truly, no fooling. It's just a huge difference. It's just huge, because you don't want to hear anything from someone who's never experienced what you're
right. They just read it in a book,
right? They just read it in a book. I mean, we've had how many people do we know show up and just repackage things that they've read in books,
right?
And write their book based on it.
Right.
Plenty.
Right.
So. Good on you.
When I was writing the book, there were moments. I mean, it took me almost a year, and a lot of that was having to step away for a while and process, because I had to relive it. I had to bring it up. I had to write it. I had to put it on paper. There were times I was just writing through tears.
I had to step away for a while, probably.
Yeah, and I had to step away and gather, and there were so many times that I wanted to quit and say, why am I doing this? This hurts, and why am I putting myself through this? But it's just a calling now that I have. And like you
Yes.
said, a mission. I just
Calling.
feel like I had to do it. I had to. And so I just pushed through. And I think it comes through the book. I mean, I am very honest about my feelings and what I went through, just being able to reflect on it. And that's why I have the reflection questions that I have for folks to think how, and I even in the end of the book, I say, how would you have handled this? Do you think? What would you have done if you had been through what I went through? Because I want people to think about that, because the more they think about it, the more they're going to act on it to prevent it from happening.
You
That's
think that a little bit of a safe way of getting them in the real conversation is to think about advice they would give you. They feel a little bit third party by doing it that way, and then you pivot them into thinking of their own situation.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's pretty clever. I like that. So let's talk about the book a little more, if we can.
Sure.
In the book, you said it's partially a recounting a journal, it's partially practical advice, and as we just heard, you have some specific questions that you offer the reader. Tell us a little bit more about some of the tips. Maybe offer a few. Give us some of the. We talked about some, but what other things?
Sure. Well, I start with fear because, as you know, and anybody who's watching knows, that fear holds us back in so many ways in every aspect of our lives. A lot of people don't do things they would love to try because they're afraid they're going to fail, or they're afraid they're going to succeed, or, I mean, fear just penetrates us, and it's actually our DNA. We are creatures of fear because that's how we survived back in the day when things were chasing us, and and it was a good thing for us to be afraid and to be very cautious. So fear's not a bad thing, but when it comes to getting over or through something that you need to do that's hard, you got to face that fear. And so I have quizzes in there that open up the idea of what you might be holding you back as far as fear is concerned. And I know one of mine, I'll be really honest here, there were signs that things were off. But I was afraid to ask questions because, interestingly enough, I was afraid of the answer.
Yeah.
I believe that's called denial. So, and I've had to do a lot of reflection on my part of that dance. It wasn't all his fault. As in everything, there's two sides to the story, right? And I had my part in that. And my part was, okay, he said something really interesting that I should probably ask him about, but I'm not going to. And so it was like this kind of a thing. So I have my part in that. So my quizzes are designed to have people look at, what am I afraid of? And am I afraid of stuff in me? Am I afraid of stuff in my partner? So those are kind of the quizzes. And so I start with fear. Then I move into mindset. And mindset is, again, a very broad topic, but I look at it from, okay, what was the financial environment in the house that you grew up in, your childhood? Were your parents fighting about money? Did you have a spendthrift parent and a very conservative parent, and they were always going after it because, that this person wanted to save, this person wanted to spend? And how did that affect your mindset? Do you have an abundance mindset that you think there's going to be plenty and I can make money and I'm not going to worry about money? Or do you have a scarcity mindset of, I've got to be a miser, I've got to save every penny, and there's never going to be enough? So all of that plays into our money story. And so I have people look at, where are you coming from, and why is that holding you back from having these really important conversations with your partner? So that gives you an idea of where that instructional guide part of the book. And then I use my story to reinforce what they might be thinking, or give them a new perspective. Like I said, my part in it, right? And so I run my memoir, if you will, throughout to show example of why this can build into a
Mm.
perfect storm and how to avoid it.
That was really good. I mean, the denial part is, you got me with that one. I think that we all do that more than we would care to admit.
Mm-hmm.
We really don't want the answer to the questions. And in hindsight, looking back, you could see that you had signals that something was amiss. And
But I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to cause a fight. I didn't want to cause
right.
conflict. I also, this was part of my mindset. It was a second marriage, and he was already a
Mm.
millionaire. And I told myself, oh well, it's none of my business. Even though it
Mm.
was his wife, it sure the heck was my business, but I told myself it wasn't. And he's successful, and he'll take care of it. And I mean, I have a whole list of the stuff I told myself, and to my detriment. Right? I
Yeah.
should have insisted that we talk about the
Right.
future and money and all of that. So yeah, I mean, it all plays part of it, and
Yeah.
it's bringing it to the surface. It's saying, okay, I'm doing this, and I need to stop doing this, and I need to start communicating with my partner, and we need to exchange the information, which is what we started with, right? On this very first
Yeah.
thing we said,
Yeah.
we've got to exchange the information so that somebody isn't left holding a really awful bag.
Mm. Wow. Here's a question. What's the most expensive conversation people are avoiding right now, and why do they avoid it?
The most expensive conversation. Well, I I think it's the money conversation because it is like depending on which source you
Mhm.
look at, it is either the number one or the number two reason relationships fail. And even
Mhm.
business relationships. I'm not just talking about couples here, even though my book is
Sure.
definitely towards that. And my next book is going to be about business partners, because a lot of times there's a business partner that has the information and is not sharing it, or maybe is embezzling and not, I mean, there's infidelity there too. So it doesn't really matter which relationship, but it is one of the highest costs of relationships to fail.
Yeah.
So I really believe the money conversation, and it's a hot. I mean, people just don't want to go there
Oh, no.
because, again, of their money story, their
Yeah.
conditioning, their mindset, their fear, all of that. And so they're like, well, we'll get to that. I'll talk about that. I'll ask that question another day. And but what happens if
Well,
the next day is the day,
what I'm
tragedy
thinking,
hits?
the reason why the question is what I'm thinking is we often think about that question immediately makes us, we typically think about, what expense do I have right now that I need to cut, or what, something that's not people related, something that's, I don't know, not relational at all.
Mm-hmm.
And what you have pointed out is the most expensive conversation is not being open about the entire picture with our partner, whether it's a business partner or, our love partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't often think of it that way. So that's kind of the reason for it. But the other thing that you made me think about is this whole idea of the tapes we play, how our mindset is formed by this conditioning in our youth. What were our parents fighting about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I have no clue. They thought a lot. And I never assumed it was about money, but maybe it really was at the heart of it. And I didn't find out till late in life. They were still alive at the time, how much they struggled financially. I could have put it together, I suppose, but I was oblivious to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think probably quite a bit of it was about money.
Well, you were and you weren't oblivious. I mean, all that was infiltrating in. Yeah, on some level.
Yeah.
You were being affected by it. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And even though you didn't know the topic, you saw the conflict, and and that has contributed to your mindset and your conditioning,
Mhm.
whether it's around money or otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And, to be transparent, I have a hard time pulling money out of my long-term investments because of that, I think partially. I
Mm-hmm.
probably have a scarcity mentality a little bit, although, I've had conversations with my financial planner. He says, like, what are you worried about? You're fine. And how many people say that? I've heard that a lot. When I sit down with my friends my age and they say, "Oh, I talked to my financial planner and they actually said I was fine." Or the other way that my planner has positioned it with me is like, "How long do you think you're really going to live?" you know,
Well, and that kind
and
of segues into the topic that you
go
had,
ahead.
yeah, that you had mentioned earlier and that we talked about in our previous time together after my near-death experience. And it really has affected me in this way, and that is you can't take it with you, right? You
No,
can't. I don't want to be a fool about money, but I definitely am living my best life. I am traveling a lot.
love
I
it.
am, and after that experience, realized that all this materialism that it just is so meaningless. So I've sold my house and I've banked that money and I am just, going around and living a little bit here and living a little bit there and just doing what I want to do. And it's been an incredible source of freedom for me. Because I was very much like you. I was very much scarcity mindset, and there'll never be enough, and I'll never be able to retire, and blah blah blah. And rightfully so, after what I went through and having to start from absolutely ground zero and rebuilding in the 15 years that I have is pretty incredible. But I gotta tell you, it's the real estate market was very kind to me. Thank God for the pandemic and, and all
Yeah.
rising prices because that really helped. But yeah, I mean, that experience really helped me let go of that feeling of because you can't take it with you. And I saw that very clearly. All we can take with us is love, and I still say that to this day. The only thing we have that transport and over the curtain is love.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's eternal. So as we think about engaging with our significant other and having these conversations,
Mhm.
do you have any advice on how to open it up? Now, I'm asking you this question. I know what I need to do, but often, as you said, men are a little bit bottled up this way. So I wonder if you have advice on how to get your spouse to chill out and listen to you.
And that's not an easy task.
Uh,
I'm not going to say it's easy. But again, my book, I go into that. I have sample conversations. I have what to do, what not to do. I think one of the things I would like for your audience to know right away is that because it's a triggering subject,
mhm.
you need to lay the groundwork. In
Mm,
other words, do not bring up money when you're both like really stressed out. Maybe you've had a really rough day at work, or the kids are
mm,
screaming, and it's not the time to say, you know, why did you spend that on that thing that came in Amazon today? Or be defensive. You really need to set the stage. And my advice is if you have a concern, like maybe you see something on the credit card statement and you're like, oh, I wonder what this is. What the heck is this huge purchase or whatever? And don't stomp into the room with the piece of paper in your hand, what's this? That's just but that's our natural reaction, right?
yeah,
Just take a breath and make an appointment with each other. And I really talk about how to
that's good.
set the stage, make an appointment with each other, get the kids taken care of or whatever, find a neutral place and say, we really need to have this conversation, or I have some questions. When is a good time for us to talk about this? And be respectful, right? Just those common courtesy things that we do with strangers, but we forget
Mm,
to do with the people we're close with, right? So set the groundwork, and then uh, like I use me as an example. Like sometimes people will watch me and hear my story and go, MG, I need to talk to my partner. So say, you know what? I was at this meeting today and this woman has this story and I want you to hear it. I want to share it with you so that kind of open, then you can segue into what you need to do as a couple or business partners to not have that happen. And it kind of paves the way.
Paves the way. And when you were describing the way you're getting in the face of the person, and I think of it almost like weaponizing it, and maybe sometimes it can be a follow-on from something else you might be upset about, right?
Exactly, 100%. So
The
you
other
got
thing
that out, yeah.
The other thing I thought about being the most likely recipient of that kind of a conversation is that it would be better to set up a regular time just to talk about finances and to have some triggering event cause this emotional volley. Because from the man's standpoint, I say if I would hear that, I go, oh, I'm in trouble and my defenses are going up, right? So maybe, having a regular conversation is not a bad idea.
Right. And I absolutely talk about that. And I say, if you've never had it, first of all, you need to start having them, and then you need to have them weekly until you get everything pieced together. And that's why the book is a guidebook. I mean, it actually helps you set up what you need to start talking about, and there's a progression. And then after you get everything kind of in place, then you can back off. You don't have to do it weekly or bi-weekly. You can do once a month. And when you're really in the groove, maybe once a quarter you sit down and just check in and make sure all the accounts are up to date and all the passwords are up to date and blah blah blah, right? So you're absolutely spot on there, Joe. It should be in
should be a normal thing.
Your relationship.
Yep. Just to check in. And then it's much easier to say, I saw this charge that came across this Chase account or whatever it would be. What is this? Because I can't tell. And then it's not like out of the blue. It's just part of your normal conversation. Bidirectionally, those things can happen,
Exactly. And then I also have strategies of maybe you come up with $100 no ask budget.
It keeps in mind that at a certain level, above a certain level, you should be talking before you pull the trigger on something. Right? Something
big for sure.
Yeah. Well, you have to define what's big, to your point.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And it's very, it's as original and unique as the couple is, right? And so you've got to figure that out for yourselves. Yeah. And again, that's where the money story comes in, right? Because if you have somebody who is a spendthrift and they drop $500 without even thinking about it, and your partner is like, holy moly, what did you just do? You've got to come to some sort of agreement of, like you said, what's your comfort level? And then it's not a problem anymore. You can shelf that one, It's like, okay, I have a budget of $200. I don't have to explain myself. And then that helps you have those feelings of independence, and that not that you're in a controlling environment or whatever. And again, it's like, who's making the most money, or and there's so many things you can figure out together, and you can even make it playful in a game if you
can make it playful, so that when you have your normal get together and you find out that someone has gone outside of the standard operating procedure, you can put him in the penalty box.
I like how you said him.
Well, I'm talking to you. So.
But yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually, my next thing is card deck. I'm coming up with a card deck. So to make it a little easier as well. And then I'm also going to do another edition for intergenerational. So parents to kids, because here you have older parents who were taught you do not talk about money. And you have the younger generations and kids saying, what are we going to do if something happens to you, Mom? Where is everything? So, this plays on so many levels: business partners, children, parents, couples, you name it. So,
what are you modeling for your kids? Being mindful of that, right?
Right. So, anyway.
Yeah, that's
great.
That's
what I've been up to.
Well, you're very passionate about it. I think we've tapped into it. I love it. Well, certainly put your reference to your book and your YouTube channel and your web page. I'm sure you have a web page too.
Absolutely, I do.
So if people want to get your stuff, but before we wind down, I'm kind of in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, can you share? Obviously, you don't want to share anything specific, but some of the conversations that people have had with you when they've come up to you on stage or as a follow-on to your book, of how this situation has showed up for them, or how they have questions, and I'm sure they've shared stories. I'm wondering if you have any of those stories. I know I'm putting you on the spot, so I apologize up front.
You are. You are.
I'm guessing you probably do.
Well, it's interesting because exactly what you said at the very beginning of our time together here is what I've heard from a lot of men. They come up and they
It's
just
the men.
are like, oh, wow,
Mm.
I never thought of it that way. I'm really doing my wife a disservice. The other thing I've heard is men who have tried, right? They have tried to have that conversation with their wife, and the wife has, oh, honey, you just take care of it. I trust you. That's when the man needs to say, no, you're coming with me to the financial planner. You're coming to these meetings with me. You need this information because if something happens to me, you need to be prepared. So he needs to be an advocate for his wife in that situation. Now, the opposite thing that happens with the women, it's like, oh my gosh, I want to ask my husband, but I'm really afraid of a fight, or, because men do get defensive. If a woman says, I need to know what's up with all the finances, the man's thinking to him, well, do you not trust me? You don't think I'm doing a good job? Like you said, my defenses go up, right? So that has to be worked. It's like, well, no, honey, it's not that. It's that, what if something were to happen to you, and what would I do? I don't know what to do. You've got to help me. You've got to help me. And men want to help, right? That's part of their provider thing that they have in them. And it's like, oh, okay. So on both sides of that coin, if it's looking like it's going to be a little bit of a pushback, you just have to come at it gently with love and just advocate for yourself on both sides. So that's where I come in on all of this.
That's cool. Yeah. But it is the men that come to you most.
Yeah, mostly, which really surprised me, because I thought women would be going, oh my God, no, it's the men. And I'm just like, okay. I do know, because when you wrote me about the email that I did start talking to women, and I thought, oh, I need to be a woman's advocate, and I need to tell her, blah, blah, blah. And that's where I changed to couples and started including the men, because it was the men that were coming to me afterward. And that to me was my sign that I needed to be more broad and look at both sides of the coin. And I'm really glad I did that. Because, I didn't have that chance with my husband. He's gone. But I think that had all of this happened in a different parallel universe, that he would have been one of those men that thought, oh, wow, yeah, I need to let her know what's going on. So anyway.
Well, I just think it's a really unique calling, because honestly, I haven't heard of anyone else doing this.
Nobody's written this book, I can tell you that.
That's right. That's right.
Nobody's written this book, and I'm really proud of this book. I think it's, it's different. It's not just me spewing my guts out saying, this is what happened to me, poor me, poor me. No, this is, here's how to not have this happen to you. Start talking to each other. And this is how you start talking to each other. So,
well, it sounds fantastic. And I think it's also really, I appreciate the way you have framed it, that here's my situation, here's what I've learned, here's some guidelines for you and some suggestions for you, but I'm still in process, right? And again, it's that authenticity that I think is really important. And, I think people connecting with you personally is going to make a huge difference as well. So I look forward to hearing more the next time we get together. And I just want to thank you so much for coming back on Titans. This has been a fun conversation. Could be an uncomfortable conversation, but it's been fun. And I think it really is something that a lot of couples need to pay attention to. And it'll be interesting to see your next book. It seems like it's going to be around the business relationships and the same sort of concept. So,
Mhm. They're going to
Lord
be
knows
mini
what
books. They're going to be, because this is like the base, and then I'm going to do
kind of
mini books
series,
that
mini books.
that you
Yeah,
can
different
add
scenarios.
on to this. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
because I mean, like I said, the processes, the strategies are going to be very similar, but open you up to different situations and different relationships. So yeah, and Joe, thank you so much for having me
sure,
back.
absolutely.
It's been really fun to catch up
The
with you.
best place for people to reach you. And then I will put all the other information in the show notes, but go ahead and tell us the best place for them to reach you.
Probably my website, because I have a contact page on there, and you just fill it out and it comes straight to me, and my email, so I can respond straight, straight on. And that is havethoseconversations.com.
Oh, that's
Havethoseconversations.com. And
all right.
it feeds to viviancobbspeaking.com. So either one of those work. But just fill out the contact form. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm really easy to find. I'm
All
on
right.
Facebook.
I'll put all the other contact information in the show
Yeah.
notes.
But website is probably the best place.
Okay, great. Vivian, thanks again for being on. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Bye.
Hey, thanks for joining me today on Titans of Transition. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please check the show notes for additional information.